Alright, so today I'm going to be presenting on interactive word walls. So we're going to learn a little bit about those, the difference between a normal word wall and an interactive word wall, and how you might be able to incorporate that into your classroom. So the first question that I have for you guys is, how do you all teach vocabulary? Do you give students a list of words to define? Do you have students use the word in a sentence? Maybe you use Frayer note cards or flashcards. Maybe you teach students prefixes, suffixes, and root words. So that's my question. How do you guys teach vocabulary right now to your students?
I usually do the prefixes and the suffixes with my older students, and then I do flashcards or kinesthetic ways like hide and go seek or something like that.
With my kiddos last year, we had flashcards for them to review them quickly, but we also did different, like, use them in a sentence to draw a picture. So it wasn't exactly a Frayer model, but it was like a simpler version of a Frayer model.
Right, and all of those ideas are excellent ways to engage students in vocabulary and meaning making of vocabulary words. So the interactive word wall is just kind of an extension of all of those things that we already do to teach vocabulary to our students. So here's a picture of a traditional word wall. I'm sure all of you have seen this before. So with a traditional word wall, you've got the letter name and then all of the words that go along with that different letter. So this is a very typical word wall in early childhood classrooms. It's just got all of those high frequency words or those vocabulary words that you're teaching the students. So this is a traditional word wall. So have you ever used a traditional word wall in your classroom, maybe in your student teaching experience, maybe you use it with the students that you're tutoring here in the reading center? Have you guys ever used the traditional word walls before?
I have not, because I've been mostly with the older students, but I've seen them in other classrooms, but I never personally did them.
Yeah, same. My students, they all had different words that they were learning, so it would have been a very lengthy word wall. So
Yep, so I know in my experience we have used traditional word walls before, and we had all of the letters up there, and then as we came across those vocabulary words, we would put the word on a note card, and then we'd stick it up on the traditional word wall. And we used it, the question 3, do you use traditional word walls for specific content areas? We used it for all content areas, so just as we came across a word in any different content area, we would stick it up there. So it was beneficial in that way. So do you guys see any benefits or challenges for using the traditional word wall? I know, Catherine, you mentioned with your students there would be a lot of words to add, and you had very individualized vocabulary instruction. So that might be a challenge.
For the students who are more advanced, with using more words on the wall, I feel like the room on the wall would be kind of a big deal.
Yeah, just the
spacing.
The space to put it up. Yeah, that would definitely be a challenge.
But a benefit would be that they get to, frequently, reference it for words that they've seen, especially if maybe they're having a tricky time remembering a word.
Right.
That might be a good visual cue.
Yeah, so just that visual aid in the classroom, being able to look up there really quick and see the words, see words that are also, that start with the same letter, all of that stuff. I know a challenge for us was when students would have tests, like spelling tests or vocabulary tests, you had to cover the word wall every single week, which isn't a huge deal, but that is, again, a challenge. It is time consuming and something that you do have to do. So an interactive word wall is a little bit different than a traditional word wall. So just the definition of a word wall in general is a systematic display of vocabulary words within a classroom. So that's just what a word wall is. But an interactive word wall takes it one step further because it requires the student participation in the creation of the word wall, the words, and how the words are organized. So rather than a traditional word wall where you've got all those words and you just stick them up on the wall, the interactive word wall requires the students to participate in the creation of the word wall. So there's a little rubric here that I found when doing research about the interactive word wall. So there's good. You just have the vocabulary posted, the words are aligned with current instruction, and words are visible from a distance. So in a better word wall, you also have the words arranged to illustrate relationships with organized learning. You might have student-generated material on the word wall, and then visual supports are in black and white, or there's cartoon pictures. So that's a better word wall, so you're adding that visual element. But then a best type of word wall, an interactive word wall, has all of those things, but it also has color pictures. Photographs are actual items. So you're making those words more and more concrete, more student-generated, more meaningful to the student because they are creating those words, those vocabulary words. They are organizing them. They are working with their peers to figure out and build relationships between those words. So I've got an example of an interactive word wall for each classroom. I know sometimes teachers think word walls can really only be used in like language arts or vocabulary teaching, but there is examples of word walls for each content area of the interactive word wall. So here we see one for language arts. We've got ped, so the prefix ped means foot or stand. So then the students drew a picture of a pedicure, of a peddler, and of a pedal. So as you can see, those are student-generated drawings and probably student-generated words as well. So that's an example for language arts. An interactive word wall in science, you can see here we've got weather words. So students created a picture to go along with the different weather words. We've got sunny, we've got a hurricane, fall, rain, Fahrenheit. So this looks kind of fun. It looks like the students made a craft or some sort of visual representation of those weather words for science. Here's an interactive word wall for social studies. So this one looks like it was created by older students. They've got the question, how was the American Revolution successful? Then the vocabulary words and their definitions are over here. And you can see those students created pictures and drawings to go along with those different vocabulary words. So I like this one. This is obviously a little bit older students. They've got the words independence, petition, common sense. So you can even incorporate that interactive word wall into a social studies class. And then we've got an interactive word wall for math. So this one's a little bit different. The teacher put the different math words, so add, subtract, multiply, divide, then they've got variable and equals, and then the students came up with words that go along with those different words. So they were able to group words into those different categories. So again, it's interactive. The students are creating the meaning. They're grouping those words together. This one doesn't necessarily have pictures per se. They do have the pictures of the different math terms, but this is more like the grouping aspect of those math words. So, have you guys ever used an interactive word wall, or maybe you've seen a teacher using an interactive word wall before? Have either of you guys experienced that? Did you ever experience it when you were in school? I know when I was in junior high, we did something kind of like this in my reading class where we had to create the pictures. Did you ever experience it when you were attending school? No. What could you see as maybe a benefit or a challenge of the interactive word wall? We kind of discussed the benefits and challenges of a regular traditional word wall. Do you see any benefits or challenges of an interactive word wall?
I mean, I guess the same benefits, would be that they'd have a wall to reference the words that you're using in the curriculum, and then with it having the students actually participate and create things that might help with their memory recall of those words.
Right.
And some students might take longer time making the picture, so I feel like, and they would get distraught if they couldn't finish it the way
Yes.
they wanted to, so that can cause an issue.
That could be a challenge, and even what you said, Sam, about the space, this is going to take up even more space
Yeah.
than just a little note card. So you have to find that wall space to put these big pictures up rather than just a little note card. But I definitely see a benefit is the students are having more ownership of those words,
Yeah.
and they're really working harder to make meaning. They're not just defining something from a dictionary. So there's definitely benefits and challenges to both traditional word walls and interactive word walls.
So do you manipulate the wall per unit? Like, let's say like you're doing, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like, in science you're doing a weather unit and they show the weather, but then maybe the next unit isn't weather focused, it's like life cycle focused,
Yeah.
and they're doing different words. Is it like, do you just take down that word wall, or is there a way that you like move and like store those words somewhere else in the
I think
classroom?
ideally, if we had all the space in the world, I would love to take that word wall from the weather unit and maybe push it off to the side, and then they could create their new life cycle word wall, and then maybe they could draw comparisons between the two.
Okay.
That would obviously be an ideal situation, but we don't always have that much wall space to put something up. So ideally, it would be cool to kind of see the units progress like along the wall. Like here's our science word walls, here's this unit, then this unit, then this unit. So I think that would be an ideal situation, but probably in most classrooms you would have to.
Take a picture of it. And
Yeah, or even take a picture of it and stick it on the wall. That's a good idea too.
Cool.
That would be the ideal situation. So I want us to compare the traditional and the interactive word walls, and we can just put a couple bullet points up here for the both of them. So what do you guys remember about a traditional word wall versus an interactive word wall? Maybe there's some similarities, maybe there's some differences.
Traditional has words from the unit that they're working on, or I guess like
Mm-hmm.
words.
What about the interactive word wall?
It has student created words.
Yeah.
or-
Yeah, student created words.
And then under that you can also put it has manipulatives, kind of.
Yes, it could have manipulatives.
Like visual.
Visual.
And I think I've seen word walls where you can like manipulate things.
Yeah,
like
you
on
could
the
even,
side.
if you wanted to take it one step further, you could legitimately have something to manipulate on the word wall. Now, do you guys think that the teacher could come up with words for the interactive word wall, or do you think the students have to come up with the words for the interactive word wall?
No, both.
Yeah, both.
Yep, you could definitely do both. So the example that I'm going to give us is if a teacher had a list of words and then gave it to the students, but you could definitely have the students either with a traditional word wall or with the interactive word wall. The students could even choose the words, which then gives the students that extra ownership of the words that they chose. Alright, so we are going to practice creating our own little card for an interactive word wall. So we're going to pretend we're doing a language arts lesson on the book Sarah Plain and Tall by Patricia McLachlan. So this is a very typical book to read in a third grade classroom. It's got some great vocabulary. So this is as if we were doing something like this in a third grade room. So let's pretend we read through chapter 1. We've got the chapter 1 vocabulary words, and the teacher came up with this list of words from chapter 1. So we've got the word dusk, hollow, hearth, troublesome, holler, prairie, feisty, homely, advertisement, and ashes. So obviously those were all words from chapter 1. So the teacher could ask the student to choose a word from the word wall, and then they would have to come up with their own picture and definition for the interactive word wall. So I have an example here of the word holler. So as a student, I would have to figure out the definition of holler, and I said to yell loudly. Then I would have to come up with some sort of picture representation of that word holler. So here I've got a little guy yelling in all caps to say he's yelling very loudly, "Hey, what's up?" Maybe he's yelling to somebody on the other side of the paper. So I'm visually representing the word holler after I defined it in my own words. So what I want you guys to do is choose your own word from this list. And I've got a piece of paper here and some crayons. So you have to first figure out how you're going to define your word, and I always challenge my students to not use the word in your definition. And then you would also challenge students to figure out what resources they could use to define the word. So maybe you would use dictionary.com, maybe you would use a normal dictionary, so you could challenge the students to find the definition of the word and then put it in their own words. So go ahead and choose a word from the list.
Which word are you choosing? So what word did you choose, Sam?
I chose to do ashes.
And how are you going to define your word? What are you going to use?
Well, I looked it up using dictionary.com, and then it said that it was the powdery residue left after burning of a substance, so I plan on drawing a fire.
Excellent. And what word did you choose, Catherine?
I chose prairie, and I also used dictionary.com, and
Okay.
it says it's a large open area of grassland. So
Excellent.
I'm going to write it and then draw some tall grass in a field.
Awesome job. Next, we're going to share how we visually represented our words for our own personal interactive word wall.
All right, Sam, why don't you share your interactive word wall?
Alright, so I chose ashes, and the definition I found was the powdery residue left after the burning of a substance. So I chose to draw a fire, and then the little ashes around it.
Okay, and then I did prairie, and it was defined as a large open area of grassland. So I tried to make sure like the grass went all through the page, and I drew some clouds and just tried to focus on the grass.
Very nice. All right, so now that we've shared our own words and definitions and pictures for our interactive word wall, let's discuss some closing thoughts. So we already shared out and we already talked about some challenges and some strengths, but I want to know if your thoughts have changed now that you have practiced doing the interactive word wall on your own. So do you think maybe this is something you might use in your classroom or in your tutoring experience here? Could you see any challenges or any strengths that you might have realized as you were practicing it on your own?
Yeah, I think as long as you really plan for like the extra time in your lessons and like give the students maybe like a clear time frame, you know, and give them a countdown of how much time maybe they have left to draw, that can maybe eliminate some of those challenges with like the time management aspect.
Yes, definitely. I think that's a great idea. Maybe put a timer up on the board, say you have 5 minutes to draw your picture, and then when it's done, it's done. I definitely think that would be a great idea.
Because most of my students have a hard time being creative, especially when tutoring, and I know it would take them a long time to decide what to draw, so I feel like the time limit
Would help, yeah. And maybe in the one-on-one setting, you could work with them a little bit more than you could with the whole classroom.
Yeah.
And do you guys think that you might use this vocabulary strategy if you had, you know, the wall space and the time, obviously, to do it?
Yeah, I think potentially with like the special ed background, sometimes like we don't have those instructional like opportunities depending if we're like doing pull in, pull out.
Yeah.
But it could be something maybe to like suggest to like a general ed teacher.
And I think you could even do maybe like a personal, maybe not a word wall, but maybe a word journal or something for the student to make it a little bit more personalized. You could just, you know, bind together the words as the students create them, and that might be kind of fun for those more special ed kids that are, you know, they're getting pulled out the word, like you said, push in. All right, do you guys have any closing thoughts, questions, or comments about the interactive word wall?
I think it is a great idea, and I will plan on utilizing this in my classroom.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.